Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sprinkle for Some Love with a Cause by Trisha Mullin. Today we have Jenn Henrichs here. She is a gastroparesis sufferer from GP. She is from Wisconsin, so I would like to welcome her here. Hello. Welcome, Jenn.
Hi.
Hi. So I kind of want to get a little bit more about your story and your fight with GP. I kind of want to start off at where you first noticed something was going wrong and how old were you?
So I was about 15, 16 years old. I used to eat pretty much anything without a problem. And one day I just started having stomach pains. And we were kind of just putting it off as normal basic stomach problems. My parents thought it was, like a kink in the intestines or just, intestinal issues.
Okay.
And after a couple of weeks, I was still having these issues, and my aunt came over, and we were eating pizza, and I had maybe one or two pieces of pizza, and I just started keeling over again, as I normally have been for like the last couple of weeks, and my aunt's like, I don't think this is an intestinal problem. I actually think it's like a stomach problem. And she's like, have you ever seen a doctor for it? And I said, no, we just think it's just something, just an issue. We've just been kind of brushing it off. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I said, but it's been happening a lot more after I eat or drink anything. So my mom ended up scheduling me an appointment, and we had gone together. And so I was sitting there, and the doctor was like, stay off of caffeine and coffee for a couple weeks and see if that helps. So I did, and it still didn't fix anything. And then they thought that maybe it was lactose intolerant, so I stayed off of dairy for a month, and I'm like, that's not helping at all. I'm being very strict with my diet. And so we went back again, and he was like, I hear some gurgling noises. There's something going wrong. I am starting to think it's gastroparesis. And just kind of be careful with the caffeine, the coffee, and things that you eat. So I did, obviously, as best as I could. It wasn't this, I'm 31 years old now, so this was obviously a while back. It wasn't very known then, I think, as it is now.
Right. So how old were you around that time?
I was between 15 and 16 years old.
Oh, yeah, there wasn't a diagnosis then yet at that point. So no matter what they looked at, it wasn't going to be the answer to the question yet because doctors were not on the same page as there wasn't even the word gastroparesis yet. So,
Right. It just was a thing that I think because they were looking at it for so long, and I think it was just because they must have looked up some information and was like, this is what we think it might be.
Did you ever have to do the celiac diet or figure out if you were celiac?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did the process of elimination, basically, with multiple food issues and irritations to see what exactly was irritating you or causing you to have these acid flares. And they couldn't figure out what without a gastroparesis as an even possible diagnosis because doctors hadn't even figured out what it is yet.
Right.
They then start to assume we're lying or we're this because they've gone through all of these possible answers and it's none of those. So, at this point, did you have to deal with that? Like, was that ever an issue where they just thought, well, maybe you're lying or maybe you just don't know what's going on?
In the beginning, I think it was more of there's nothing wrong with you. It's just stomach issues. But I think we had gone to a different doctor 30 minutes away, and they had checked my stomach, and they're like, this is what I think it might be, but we don't know much about it. So basically it was a bland diet, no, chicken, rice, plain Jane stuff. And so that was a struggle for me, obviously, but it still didn't exactly help 100%.
Yeah, so what kind of issues were you still, even though you eliminated all these foods that they're saying is the problem, so you got rid of 101 things, now you're on these immediate, like, 12 items, and you're living off of them, and nothing's really changed? Or, like, what would you describe the symptoms that you're saying wouldn't change? What would that be?
It really didn't change much. I still had a lot of stomach pains. I mean, the best to describe them was like awful period pains times 10. I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand. Like, I had to, like, lean over.
Mm-hmm.
I was working at the time. I'd have to go home because I wasn't able to, like, do my job because I was in so much pain.
Were you vomiting still at that point as well, or were you just having the severe cramps?
Just the severe cramps in the beginning.
Okay. So then you went back in and kind of was like, hey, this isn't working, so...
Yeah, and they were like, well, we don't really know much about it.
Okay.
Right.
So did they give you a diagnosis of GP at that point, though, or what did they say they didn't know much about? What was that diagnosis?
They didn't know much about GP. They just knew, like, with...
So what test did they do to see that you had GP? Was it like an ultrasound or a delayed emptying study or an x-ray?
It was an ultrasound, and they had used, like, a stethoscope to, like, listen to my stomach.
Okay.
And actually, they thought I was constipated at first, too, because of all of the pain. I don't think I was going to the bathroom much either, now that I recall.
Right.
So, because I would try, obviously, we thought it was an intestinal thing, you know. So that obviously wasn't the issue, and they admitted we don't know much about it, but this is just what we think it is.
Okay.
And then fast forward, let's see what happened. Till when I was about, I want to say 3 years ago, I actually started having, before that, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was starting to have the nausea episode. Still didn't really think of anything about it because I didn't really know much about it at that point. Never really brought it up to the doctors because I didn't know that it was like a thing where you could be hospitalized with it.
Well, yeah, without you being aware of what GP is and the doctor not being aware of what GP is and no one telling you what to really look for, just telling you, hey, you have GP. That's the same thing as saying, like, you know, without knowing, would you like an IBM or an iMac?
Right.
You know, like, I don't know which one's better. Like, you know, like, I don't really, if you don't know.
What would you prefer?
Right. And if I couldn't tell you about either, you're just kind of winging it the whole way without actually being able to contest or be able to say, no, that's not good, or yes, that's good, because you don't have something to compare or a reference, you know, point of reference.
I wasn't educated with it. I didn't have any. I never really looked into it. I just knew it was something that I had. Things that I ate would make me sick, and that's all I knew.
Right. So at this point, what did you realize? Like, when did you start realizing that something's going to have to change in order for me to move forward with food?
So that was the kicker. My sister actually sent a message to my mom and myself. We're in a group chat 99% of the time. And she said, so I went to the doctor for my stomach pains, and it turns out I have gastroparesis. And I said, I do too. And she goes, that's funny because she goes, I don't know if, she goes, are you sure? Because it's really rare. And I'm like, well, maybe it's gas. I said, it's gastro something. I said, maybe it's, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure.
Right, that's what it was.
Well, a few months, like a year after that, I was just throwing up constantly 2-3 weeks in a row. And I couldn't stop. So I ended up going to the ER, and I said, you know, I think it's in the charts that I have gastroparesis. I said, I'm not 100% sure. I said, I kind of did some information on it because my sister has it, and I was looking into it. I said, I'm pretty sure that's what I have. And I looked at my file, and I said, yep, that's what it is, and we think that's what this episode is your flare-up right now.
Correct.
So I was admitted to the hospital, and I texted my mom and my sister, and I said, remember when we couldn't just figure out if it was gastroparesis or not? I said, it is what I'm going through right now. I said, I am indeed in a flare-up. And my sister goes, that's really crazy that we both have it. She goes, because it's not genetic at all.
So they say it's not genetic at all.
Say.
But me and my daughter have it, and my daughter has never had the surgeries I've had or the treatments that I've had, and we both don't have diabetes.
Right. And we are currently, my son is 9 years old and is having the same issues. So we are currently having him tested for gastroparesis as well. We just started doing that actually 3-ish weeks ago. We started this whole process. So right now he's constipated and whatever, so we're cleaning that out, and then we're going to do another ultrasound on his stomach and go from there.
And in Wisconsin, do they do the delayed emptying study?
They do. That was the next thing I was going to say. So 2 years ago, they actually did sign me up for the delayed study. And they did confirm that it was, gastroparesis. It's a very slow emptying that I'm going through. And, I just got to take it as it is. They did say that it was a possibility that it's celiac, so they retested for that. And I do not have celiac, which is good. But, yeah, they did have to put me under and do that whole process and take a biopsy of my stomach.
Okay, for an endoscopy?
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, the delayed emptying study also is really good for your son because it shows at this current moment how much the stomach is actually emptying, and that can change based on your flare. It can get worse or better based on what's going on with you or your body. So getting the actual delayed emptying study will give you an idea of how severe, so you'll know whether to attack full throttle or not. You don't want to attack full throttle if it's not, and everybody's GP is a little bit different. So learning the level of the delayed emptying is important for those, or using medications to help him go or to use the bathroom, making sure he's emptying whatever his body is processing. But you want to definitely get that delayed emptying study for him as well. Now for you, after you received that back, did you change any of your diets, or have you had to go through anything else after that, like eliminating things?
I do try to eliminate things that are more harsh on my stomach. So someday I really have pushed back on chips, cookies. I mean, not that I was really a big eater on those anyway. Fast food, anything that's high in dairy, like custard and ice cream, milk. I don't drink milk. Those seem to cause it a lot more. I can eat things like yogurt and cheese without an issue. Bread.
And did you have any other medical issues as well?
I am type 1 diabetic. I was type 1 when I turned 21, about 6 months after I had my son. So I did have gastroparesis before I had diabetes.
Okay. Has your diabetes been affected at all from your GP, or has your GP been affected from your diabetes, vice versa?
I can tell that I'm in flare-up mode with my diabetes, so it kind of helps when it helps, but it doesn't help. So when I'm not digesting my food, I go into a low, because obviously my food, I'll go into a low because my food isn't digesting, so I'm not keeping up.
Right, you're not receiving any of the sugar at all, so everything goes low because you're not receiving it. It's just sitting there.
Right. So I fought constantly have me push back on my long-lasting insulin when I realize that that's happening. And then when I am digesting my food, my sugars spike more because I'm taking less insulin than what I'm supposed to be.
Okay. That makes sense. So you've learned how to manage with this new ordeal.
I'm sorry, what?
So you've learned how to manage like the whole ordeal together with both diagnoses now and this whole new experience of life.
Yes, and it actually took me a while to figure that out. It's been about a year and a half. It took about a year and a half where I realized like this was happening. My doctors, were like, I'm not understanding like the whole insulin. And that's why I had to get my so I was type 2 after I had my son, and then 3 or 4 years ago, I had to get my pancreas tested because I was having all of the issues with the highs and the lows. Mm-hmm. It turns out I am a type 1 now, but it makes more sense, they said, because it's when I digest and don't digest, my insulin will either work or won't work.
Okay, so you've changed from type 2 diabetes to type 1 during the process of the GP fight.
Yes.
Okay, I got that. Well, that's hard, definitely. And so what is your current status now with GP and diabetes? And how are you intertwining with the two of them together? Like, what's your current treatment plan?
So my current treatment plan is they basically have me, if I'm, my insulin isn't working per se, like if I'm getting lows or if I'm getting highs, I'm constantly in contact with my doctors. I have an app on my phone where I can email them instead of having to call them on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or have you. I have a CGM, a constant glucose monitor, so that I can scan it, and then that monitor will, I hook it up to my computer and it loads all that information, and then my doctors are able to see that information so they can work with me and say, hey, take this much for this time, and then you're long lasting, take this much.
That is really awesome. I never knew that because I don't have diabetes, so that's not something I've ever been aware of. But that is some good knowledge to have because I do know a few other people that do have diabetes, and they kind of monitor on their own, and they only really go to the doctors when things are abnormal or stay abnormal for so long. They're not actually like up and down and all their stuff like what you are, which is very good because that was going to be my next question is how do you know how much or how less do you need? But with having the machine there and having the doctors, when you upload, there goes the answer through the app. So that's wonderful.
And I do have to say the CGM I've had this one actually since December. I had not been in the hospital for about a year at that point. So it was really good considering how high my blood sugars were unreadable when I was doing finger pricks because I couldn't keep up with it. I would have to test like every hour to 2 hours in order to keep up with it, and that was painful to me. So I just wouldn't. And my doctors now have noticed a huge. I mean, it's still rocky. I mean, the 200s blood sugar wise, but it's getting a lot better. Considering with working with the doctors and able to change it all the time as much as I am.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really, really works. I absolutely love it. I love that I can communicate with my doctors and they work with me and they can, every weekend I load up my meter and they're like, hey, try this, maybe this will, this will work and it'll work. And then then obviously like a couple weeks later, it'll change again. And then it's constantly changing. But I would rather do that than have, the high numbers that I was in the hospital like every 6 months up until a year and a half ago.
Have you also tried a food diary so that way on the days that you notice you're still high, you can realize what you ate like the day before or the day of?
Honestly, I don't, because every time, with stuff that I eat, some days I don't. It's all different depending on the day. It's really weird. One day I can have, okay, so for example, today. Yesterday I had toast with jelly on it for breakfast, and I corrected it, and it was fine. Today I had toast with jelly on it, corrected for it, and I had it read high. I sent a picture to my boyfriend, and I said, I don't think my food is digesting again, or my food must be digesting. And, he was like, well, call your doctor. So, it really depends on the day, or, like on my flare-ups, what's happening.
Okay, I get that, which makes it even harder to manage.
Yeah, and again, the CGM really helps me, work it out. I sent a message to my doctor today. She got right back to me. So we're on a whole new dose for the next couple days.
Yes. So, what are you currently doing that's working for your GP? Are you currently on any antibiotics or medications or
My sister was on Reglan, and that was suggested to me to help, but she was having problems she was having twitching problems, her finger, tics, I guess you would say. Her fingers would just twitch every now and again. And my doctor brought it up to me, and she goes, but one of the side effects, is you would lose, is Parkinson's disease. And I was like, I work with kids. I work as a teacher at a daycare. Now I have switched jobs, and I still use my hands. So not being able to use my hands is not an option. So I've opted out on using medication. I just will eat. So I noticed to myself, I'll eat smaller meals or kind of snack on my meals throughout the day instead of eating 3 huge meals.
Okay.
So I'll eat 5 or 6 times a day. It literally looks like all I'm doing is eating all day. 5 or 6 times a day, I'm eating little meals so that the bloating stays down, the sugars are more level.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
So with that diet though, in that routine, that helps you a lot to where you're able to manage.
Yeah. And my boyfriend's a huge hunter, a huge fisherman. So we, the not so fatty, greasy meats really help with keeping the flare-ups down as well.
Plus, none of those meats that you go and catch yourself have any additive hormones or genetically modified either. So,
Correct.
genetically modified food and hormone food or processed food, any of those 3 also play a role in our body and how we digest it as well. So, when you have fresh, man caught food, woman caught food, however caught food, that definitely changes the health factor. And it's more healthy for you as well. So that is a good thing. I see you guys are definitely fishermen. I was checking out your profile before we got on. And I was checking out you guys fish and a lot. Me and my husband go boating as well and fish. He's more of the fisherman. I'm more of the photographer. I just take all the pretty photos of everything, and I'll go live and just, la-di-da-da. Oh, are we done fishing yet?
Enjoy life and relax.
Yeah, are we done yet? Or how much longer? Okay, well, I might take a nap on the boat. Wake me up when you're ready.
That's exactly how it is. I always fall asleep on the boat. It's just so relaxing and calming. I mean, I do get motion sickness. I do take patches actually now for the motion sickness and the nausea because they last 3 days for a patch, and those actually have been helping a lot.
What are the patches, if you don't mind me asking?
They are called. Give me 1 second. I can look in the bathroom and check that out for you. Alrighty. They are called
Can you spell that for the audience in case they're wondering?
Absolutely. SCOPOLAMINE. They're about a milligram for the dosage, and they last 3 days.
3 days. Okay, and that helps you with your nauseous as well for your GP and like boat nauseous? Because they're kind of the same to me almost. Like motion sickness is kind of like the same as I feel with GP. So medications, I never thought about that. Medications for motion sickness would help for GP. I didn't think about that. That is a good thing. And they help for 3 days. Like, you're not even on the boat for 3 days, so generally.
Right. And I could tell, like, that, so I put it on, and now that I remember in December when I was hospitalized, right, like when I had the CGM added, they had put a patch behind my ear because none of the nausea medicines were helping.
Yeah, Zofran doesn't seem to work for me very much. It seems to make me more nauseous. And the only time that Zofran really works for me is if I'm having morphine. It'll work a little bit before, but I can't take it in a strong dosage. But morphine makes me super sick too, that I can't take that in my IV. I'll start vomiting as soon as it hits my IV.
I start getting like really shaky and cold chills, so I can't do that either.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. But the only time I really need Zofran is then, because Zofran for me doesn't work any other time. But for some reason with the morphine it works, but when it's not with the morphine it doesn't work, and I'm sick as all heck, and I'm vomiting, and I'm sick. I can't, and Zofran is like the number one go-to. It's like the only thing that they use out here that they're like, oh, well, I don't really know what to tell you.
Right.
Like, there's no plan B, plan C, no, what about some Pepcid or some Tums or, like, anything?
Right. And they'll give me, like, little patches that have, like, peppermint on them to help with the nausea, which helps a little bit, but not as much as actually what these do. And they're kind of discreet. I mean, I've had some people notice them if they're really looking. And I've tailored them pale. So the fact that these are completely unnoticeable is amazing. They work really well. I can eat pretty much anything when I have them. I don't wear them as much as I probably should, just because I only get 3 at a time, and I don't want to like
use them all up.
Use them all up, or use up, like, having my doctor keep putting in a prescription for them. So I only use them like as needed, or if I'm like really noticing like I'm struggling in the mornings with my nausea. And then I know to like put them on.
Okay.
So.
Definitely. So I'm interested in those. I'm going to take a look at those for myself. I might just be getting on Amazon and see if I can Amazon those. I'm not sure if those would be, but you can do a lot of prescriptions nowadays on Amazon. More surprisingly.
I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, you can even get like medications from Canada and stuff on Amazon.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I might have to try that then, too.
Yeah, a friend of mine's going to Henry Ford to get like prescriptions so she can go to Canada and try to get medication through there with the prescriptions, but she's doing it like under her doctor's care, which is what's best. Even though she can get the prescriptions without, generally I do advise like a doctor's care for most of those, but like anti-nauseous medications and stuff like that, I mean, I'm just going to give it a try and see what happens.
Well, right, and I completely agree. If you're going to try a new medication, I completely suggest asking your doctor about it first, because you don't know if you're taking other medications, it could counteract.
Yes, it can interact and all of that.
Medication, and then you're overdosing yourself. So I'm the same way.
Definitely. So even if you're going to get like a medication from another country where that's not here or offered, it's good to go under a doctor's care with it and have them overseeing your overall care or well-being while on that new medication. For sure. So, let's talk about your son real quick, if you don't mind me asking. What is the future for him, do you think? When will you be going to these tests to figure out, if he does have GP?
He does have another appointment coming up in about 2 weeks to get his stomach looked at again, since he's still struggling with stomach pains. He did express yesterday, actually, that he was feeling a little nauseous. His belly's been aching. And last week, a couple of times, he went to bed and he was like, I feel like I'm going to throw up, but I don't think I'm going to throw up. And I'm like, if you really are struggling, you have to let me know, because this is what I go through every day on a daily basis. And I'm here to help you. You need to communicate with me about how you're feeling. So with all of those, our family doctor had actually suggested us to go to Green Bay, which is about 30 minutes away from us, to see a doctor that does know that kind of information, do ultrasounds, go from there. I have told him if it is what it is, obviously he's got two loving people in his family that will support him and be there for him and help him out.
Yes, and it's definitely I don't know, I always feel like when my daughter comes to me with like issues with her GP that I never looked at my GP as a blessing before, but at that moment in life I was like, oh, I'm so blessed to have gone through this before, so I can help her and like tell her what to do next and tell her what to take, and I don't have to sit here and hear her cries and wonder what the heck's wrong with her. Like, right. I know right away.
How to support
yeah,
her,
so
her eating pads, laying down, less.
Yeah, so we know all the remedies. So to be able to help kiss our kids boo boo and still be mom at that time and be like super mom is awesome, because a lot of other moms that do have children that are going through this, they're lost and they have no idea what's what, and when their kids complain they don't know if it's even what's going on or what's not, or so we've actually have been blessed in one factor or another with our GP, so where we could take our experience and turn it around and help our child now. And not only that, but sometimes your children help you more than you realize. And now you're like, oh, well, I have to get through this even more, because then I'll know what's next so I can help him when he gets to that point. You know what I mean? So we have to continue our fight, because we have to know what it all holds, so we can then, when he gets to those stages, help him at that point. So that's definitely something I'm interested in following up with you on. I would like to definitely hear the two of your journeys and how and where his goes and whether it leads to GP or not. I would hope not for him, but sadly, I definitely think Mama knows best, and Mama knows her body, and Mama knows her kid's body, and if Mama's thinking GP, Mama's probably hot on a trail. So,
Mama knows.
Yeah, Mama already knows. So I definitely do think GP is what it is. So I would hope that the two of you, I'm in the middle of looking for a doctor as well that me and my daughter can go to. Our GP specialist out here redid all of his offices and then relocated them, and he's been up in the mix, and I don't think he expected the state to reopen as fast as it did. So he was remodeling. So now we're all like on a wait-in mission, and of course I'm not the only one waiting. So I've just been thinking of getting a new doctor so I can get her in quicker, because during the process of the pandemic, we were able to fully get like the rest of the diagnosis and testing done from other doctors. But now I need a GP specialist for her. Not so much of me, because I manage my own and I don't really do so much of the treatments right now. But I really want one for us, because then we can go to our appointments together and not have to be running from her doctors to my doctors back and forth. We can kind of just kill two birds with one stone. And then any procedures or anything like that, we could move forward with. And, I just want the same doctor to know her body and our body and the genetic factor, because I definitely feel there's a genetic factor, because one of my nieces have it as well. It's like, it's not as rare as you think. I think, like my mother-in-law had it. I know a lot of people now that have it more than ever before. And a part of it is they didn't know what they were looking for before. And they still don't know what they're looking for as far as the genetic connection. But there's definitely a genetic connection, because my daughter was born with it. And you don't just be born, like, with issues like that. So to definitely have to say, like, yeah, there's a genetic connection for sure.
For sure.
And
there has to be, because there's no way. I mean, there's no way that, even my sister and myself.
And then your child, that's a set of 3, and I have a set of 3. And or I have a set of 4 actually right now in my family. And for it to be so rare, I don't understand in those basic generations. And we haven't even gone generations back. You know what I mean? Before the disease was even thought of. So who knows how many family members of mine have once upon a time had this issue. Because the name wasn't even thought of until like the last 15 years. So we're at a point of only being able to tell the last 15 years. And even then, we're at a point with genetics to where we would have to know the genetic connection to know what we're looking for. And we haven't even got the genetic connection yet with GP. So I'm looking forward to hearing what those genetic connections are. And for the longest time, I kind of always thought it was like a mother-daughter thing. But I'm hearing more little boys are getting it as well. So it's not just a mother-daughter. And then I kind of thought maybe it's a first child thing. Like, or every other kid thing. But I'm not seeing like enough of a pattern yet to identify, but I definitely know there's a pattern. But like, why 2 sisters out of 10 sisters or 2 sisters out of 4 sisters? Like, there shouldn't even be more than one with a rare disease. It's just a hit or miss, and that's what makes it rare. The fact that takes away from the rareness is when multiple family members from the same family have it. That's not so rare.
Yeah.
So which one is it? Is it rare or is it genetic? Oh, by the way, diabetes. And then you also have a lot of people that have nothing to do with genetic or rare. They just got vagus nerve damage from diabetes. So then they fall into a different class. Then you have people that had surgeries where someone screwed some stuff up. And okay, they fall into a different class. But what about the unknown and the genetic part? The unknown, I feel those unknown people, most of the time are genetic, which would have been you before your diabetes because you did not have diabetes beforehand, and you didn't develop diabetes until a pregnancy, which is common for some women, and then some women do not get rid of diabetes after a pregnancy. It just depends on the woman and her body and whether it wants to get rid of it or not. So, I mean, that's normal too, but that still doesn't say anything to do with GP because that's a whole separate entity in itself. So I definitely feel like genetics, I wish we like could find genetic specialists that would be willing to do like a clinical error, like clinical study or something like that, whatever you guys want to call that.
Because I've even actually honestly like Googled like studies because I would be more than happy to help with a study. You know, it's to help figure it out, figure out what's causing it, or if it
See, I've looked into studies.
That's in the food, or you know, if it's because we ate processed.
Yeah, but here's the crappiest thing about a study, though. A study does not allow, you can't be too sick to participate in a study, which most GP people are too sick. And you can't be having any other multiple diseases or illnesses. And 90% of them have multiple diseases or other illnesses. I kind of haven't really just met a person that just has GP and like that's it. Like, there's always a secondary issue or something else, but it's not necessarily even related to GP. But there's not a single group of people so far that I've come across that just have GP only. And those are the people that I've tried to like participate in many clinical studies for many different diseases. And every time I submit my application, I get denied because I have multiple diseases, or I get denied because I have another disease. And anybody that participates in a clinical study can only have the disease they're looking at. And, like, that's all your body can be tainted with. But with this day and age and generation, I haven't even met somebody that only has one disease. Everybody that has diseases nowadays has more than one disease. There's not one person that can just say, oh, well, I just have asthma, or, well, I just have GP. Like, it's more or less, oh, well, I've got GP and I've got this and I've got that. It might be a small couple minor things, and GP is, like, the hugest, so it feels like you just have GP. But I haven't really just come across, and I think that's part of the problem too. That's why we can't get so many clinical studies, because finding these people, by the time you actually get your GP diagnosis, your other diseases have come forth, and you already most of the time have figured those out and realized that the problem that you're having is not I might have those diseases, but that's not my problem.
And my sister even, she got tested for it, and then she got tested and now has Crohn's disease on top of it. So it's not like it's a single disease, it's gastroparesis and then something else.
Well, anytime the whole digestive tract is played a role, there's different disease names for different parts, but as it makes its way to those areas, there's other issues where, like, other machines or other surgeries or other things come into play that are more severe.
Mm-hmm.
But your whole digestive tract eventually is inevitably messed with to some level or another. And some people already have like a body that's not equipped for that. So they automatically, just like for instance, for me alone, I have in my digestive tract alone, I have GP, I have IBS, I have interstititis, I have ITA, I have let's see, the GP I mentioned already, obviously. And I know there's more. I just can't think right now.
I know, and actually now that you say that, I have IBS as well. And then on top of that, I do have low blood pressure. So when I'm in my flare up, those really bad moments, my body just, I faint. I will black out and end up on the floor. There have been a couple of times. There was one time.
So are you any form of anemic?
No, they tested for that.
And your pancreas, though, and you don't have the pancreas anemia either from the diabetes?
No.
Okay. You got lucky there, girl.
I know.
Yeah.
They said that, all of that's fine. Then again, they haven't really tested it in the last 3 years, so, I mean, I could, but I've had low blood pressure since 2008, so I was 18 then. The first episode, I had really bad cramping, but I was having, TMI, my monthly visit, but it was cramping so bad that I couldn't handle the pain. And my blood pressure just dropped, and I passed out. I called my parents crying. I said, I don't know what just happened. Like, I called them because I knew something wasn't right. And as I called them, I passed out. And luckily, they still stayed on the phone for 3 minutes waiting for me to answer as my dad was on the way to my apartment. And came in and got me. Because I told them, I said, listen, I don't know what just happened, but I just blacked out while I was on the phone with you. And they're like, yeah, Dad's on his way. So they ended up taking me to the ER, but they didn't figure out anything wrong at that time.
Yeah, that's generally what happens. I've passed out like 3 or 4 times. My daughter's passed out a couple times. That happens from the low blood pressure as well, and from the nerves trying to overwork. I don't know if you had just tried to use the bathroom and vomit, or if you were about to be. But
actually, yes, now that you say that, because I will sit on the toilet because I will have the sweat.
Yeah, you can't use both nerves at once. You kind of like blow a fuse and short circuit. If you're trying to go pee and poop and vomit, or 2 of those 3, like peeing and vomit or shitting and vomiting, you're not going to be able to. Your body will actually like pass out, literally. And then you'll come back to, and then you'll be able to do the other. Like you did one before you pass out, and then when you wake up, you'll do the other. Most of the time, you'll be waking up with vomit on the floor, and you'll be vomiting. Most of the time, you already got your poop out, and you were about to vomit while pooping. So that's the general foreplan. Normally, you're done shitting, you're about to vomit, but you can't get up from the toilet yet because you're still there. And then in the process of trying to jump up to make it to the toilet, to the sink or the tub or the trash can, you don't make it to none of the 3. You pass out, and then when you wake up, you're vomiting, and you're waking up choking on your vomit. Kind of like drunk people when they pass out, and you're like, but I wasn't drunk, I promise. I know what happened.
I've noticed once I get the cold chills and the sweats, I know it's not going to be good. I've had it at my son's doctor's appointments. I've done it at a shop go when they were back in town.
Yeah, as soon as you get those sweats, you just better get up off that toilet and go for a walk and stay sitting up and get away from. That works too, but if you're laying on the floor, like when you pass out, that's great too, though. But you're trying to distract your nerves, and your nerves still are thinking of pooping and peeing and vomiting.
This pain isn't okay. I gotta reboot. And I actually had to I looked at the pharmacist. I said, listen, if you have to call 911, I understand. They said, but I know what's going on. My blood pressure is dropping. I get mixed up between blood sugars and blood pressure. My blood pressure is dropping. Do not give me anything. I'm fine. Just,
let me be for a few minutes.
Let me be for a few minutes. I said, I promise you I'm okay. But I was getting, obviously I have like visits every 3 months where I have to, do blood tests and stuff like that. So they would test my blood pressure, and they're like, it's a little low today. So I knew we kind of got the gist that it was a low blood pressure thing that was happening. But we just needed it to be recorded. So when it happened at Shopko, the EMTs did end up coming, and they tested me standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down, and they're like, yes, your blood pressure keeps dropping every time you stand up. So it was recorded. I haven't had any episodes in, I want to say, about a year, which is really, really good.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, but, I've been eating more of, like, just, fresh caught fish, fresh hunted venison and stuff like that. So, that kind of, I think, helps as well. We're not as big, like, junk food fanatics
and
stuff like that. So, that I feel like it's helped. But even, like, if I even have cramps in my legs, like that, it's the weirdest thing. I have to be really careful with that, even because with cramps or Charlie horses in my legs, I'll use like cold water. Well, that releases the pain too fast, and then I get dizzy, and then I have to lay on the floor. So I really have to be careful pain-wise with my body, with all of that, because it easily is triggered.
Yep. So you have to manage all of that and make sure that you're not triggering your own body while trying to help your body at the same time.
Which is a very tricky concept.
It definitely is when you're dealing with multiple diseases, because on one hand they're like, oh, the cure is in this bottle, but if you take this bottle, your other problems will have these five. Like, so you're like, wait, huh?
Yeah.
No, I don't know about that one.
Like, that's why I told her, I can't take Reglan.
No, Reglan is in the black box. Reglan should not be taken. Reglan is a medication that is in the black box. The only time you're supposed to take that is if the benefits outweigh the issue. And
if it'll help you more, and I honestly wouldn't even.
The only time Reglan would benefit you more than any version of paralyzation of your face, hands, or arms, legs, or any of your body from the neck down. Not to mention your face can be paralyzed. Okay. Yeah. The only time that is a risk that I'm worth taking is when I'm trying to prevent myself from getting a feed-in tube, and I've gone down to 80, 90 pounds. Yep. You know what? Bring that Reglan on, okay?
Yep.
But furthermore than that, I'm not a firm believer in Reglan. When Pepcid, extra strength Pepcid, does the exact same thing, minus the whole side effect, minus the whole black box entity, minus the whole paralyzation concept. Like, okay, I'll just take a couple boxes of Pepcids, bring them here. Let's do that.
Right.
Extra strength.
Works for me. I mean, it doesn't make the pain go away 100%, but it's more bearable.
Yes, being able to digest food itself is a little more bearable. And getting your GERD or acid reflux in order. Most of the time, anybody with GP also has GERD or acid reflux, because there's no way you can eliminate the acid factor when the food is not going anywhere.
Right, it's all fermenting.
Yep. So your acid level's real high.
It's so bad to say this right now, but I can tell when my food is fermenting in my stomach, because when I fart, it stinks.
Yes, or when you burp.
When I'm bloated.
Or when you burp, it'll also have like an odor or a taste of old ranchy whatever. You know what I mean? Based on what you ate. Like if you ate spaghetti, then you eat spoiled spaghetti, or rotten eggs if you actually ate eggs.
Taste spaghetti, and it's like, come on.
Yes, and the teeth issues from the acid and from the vomiting, it's very important. Have you had any dental issues related to GP?
I do actually have dental issues. I'm literally working on my teeth right now. I have 2 back teeth left, and my front teeth, the top front teeth are cracked around the edges.
Okay, so you've got
Yeah,
severe dead teeth, rotted teeth from the
yeah,
vomit. Do
the
you
vomiting
mouthwash or what are you doing after you vomit? What's the first thing?
I generally try to mouthwash. I do use hydrogen peroxide on it because of the yellowing. And I use Sensodyne fast relief because, like with cavities or if it gets to the root, it usually helps with the pain right away.
So if you are brushing your teeth right away, you that's part of the problem. Even though you think that's like the opposite, it's part of it's the opposite. But mouthwash, Sensodyne mouthwash will help, but the peroxide one, um, I don't. I've used it. Don't get me wrong, and it helps with bacteria, but it's not one that should be used 10 times a day. Kind of think about like a douche in a way, and if you were to douche 10 times a day, what would that do to the positive cells?
It would clean up like the good bacteria.
Right. So it's doing the same thing to your mouth, which is causing your mouth to actually not be so good because you're overly cleaning and you
Right.
already have like acid there. So the acid stays and then you take away the positiveness. So, and then if you brush your teeth right away, you're taking away the enamel off your teeth, which is why they're decaying. So it took me a few years of learning this. So using mouthwash, I have like 3 or 4 different versions. I have like one for bad breath. I have one for sensitive teeth. I have one for gum and one for cavities, one for fluoride. I went and bought
I
like
was just today. I use my son and I actually will use the same mouthwash because I have something called geographical tongue, which is cracks in my tongue.
mhm,
The
from the
minty
dry mouth.
mouthwash
Hmm.
will burn the cracks in my tongue, and as soon as it goes in my mouth, it's right back out because I cannot handle
Yes. So you want to switch
burning.
between some that aren't going to burn your tongue, but I also use a dry mouth one. Because my mouth gets so dry. So I'll use like the dry mouth one in the morning or afternoon. And then when I'm vomiting, I'll use like the bad breath one or like a Sensodyne one. And then after I'm brushing my teeth for like this breakfast, lunch, or dinner, like the 3 times a day, I'll use the
Yeah.
hardcore, like the peroxide one during those 3 times when I'm actually brushing. But I won't brush my teeth 100 times, but I'll use different forms of mouthwash. But I'm paying attention to how strong they are because your mouth doesn't need that strong. You feel me? You're just getting rid of the vomitness and the acid from the vomit. So like the bad breath or cavity one, and when I used the cavity one, it helped a lot of my cavities. And I use it's like a white bottle. They're actually really expensive, but they last for so long because when I'm buying 4 or 5 of them bottles, I'm only using a little here, a little there of each one, so they'll generally last me a few months because I'm not just using that one bottle, you know.
Right.
But they're like
And
10, maybe $12 a bottle or something like that. The ones I use, and they don't burn or any of that either. But I had to go through that where I had to get a bunch of my teeth in the back removed. I have another one up front that broke and cracked, but so I had to go back to my mouthwash and Remagen that I like just quit doing over time. But I had to get back to it. But yeah, that is something that you should look into is the mouthwash. Not only that, but there was also a prescription. Oh, excuse me, a prescription mouthwash that I used
Yeah.
too that was almost like for gum disease, but it didn't have gum disease, but it helped kill some of the bad bacteria, but left the good bacteria. So
And that makes a lot of sense too.
yeah, so a lot of gum diseases products will also help you, even though you don't have gum disease. But gum disease is getting rid of the disease only, but keeping the positive stuff there, which is what you're trying to do because your disease from your stomach is basically coming forth, and it's
Eating your teeth away.
yeah, and it's the acids really from it. But when you brush your teeth too much, you break off the enamel, which causes like the shield that protects them. So there's a couple factors there. So me and my dentist, it took some time to work with me and learn because I'm like, okay, well, I'm not getting all my teeth removed, and I'm not like gonna sit back and watch them continue to screw up. Like, what can I do along the way? And I'll even do like garlic stuff. I love garlic, but anything with garlic helps kill the bacteria in your stomach. So I love eating stuffed olives that have garlic in them because the whole clove of garlic will go in my stomach and help. And if I feel like when I burp that I'm feeling like any old food, I'll go and eat 3 or 4 pieces of stuffed olives, and they have a whole clove of garlic in them, and the whole clove goes in and does its job, but the olive masks the flavor of the garlic, and so it's not burning because it's not so fresh because it's been pickleized like in the jar.
Right.
So it's
in the brine, right?
Yeah, well, when they put it in the liquid that's in the stuffed olives, it's almost like it's pickled, so it's not like biting into a fresh one and like that. Right. The same effect, but it is a fresh one, so it does the same effect in my stomach. My husband hates when I eat those. He's like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "Well, get over it." But they definitely help me. I've noticed any form of garlic stuff helps my stomach a lot.
Or mint.
Mints does too. I love peppermints, and I love adding peppermints into my tea and stuff. But the sugar messes with my teeth more and causes the pain because the peppermints are so sugary. That I just can't do it because that sugary kind of makes me more query.
I get the sugar-free ones, but still, I mean,
I never thought of that.
But I mean, it's more for like at work because I can't really eat while I'm on the floor. So I do have I'm good friends with most of the managers. So I mean, it's nice for me to go up to them and be like, hey, I got to take a mint right now or I'm going to feel sick. Mm-hmm. And still generally say, that's fine. So, I mean, that's nice for, like, at work, I can just pop in a mint, I can't really, but, like, yeah, at home, I might just go buy a jar and just snack on it, I guess. I like garlic and I love olives. My friend and I will actually eat like a jar of olives in a day.
Yeah, so you should try some stuffed garlic olives. They're great, and they'll help with some of the bacteria levels as well. So I have a question. Have you ever been affected by like depression through any of this? Was there ever a point where you felt like I can't do this?
I do struggle. I'm going to probably cry while I'm telling this story because it really it hurts me in a way because some days, like, I get super excited for food. The first time I remember it happening, and I made I love pot roast. Love it. And I'm smelling it throughout the day. I'm so excited for it. Took one bite, and I couldn't even swallow it. I'm like, I cannot do this. It's making me so sick right now. And I just sat on my kitchen floor and bawled my eyes out. And I said, this is the worst disease I've ever had to go through, and I do not wish it. I'm sorry. I do not wish it on anybody because I can't eat some of the things that I'm excited for. I'll be excited for it all day long, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I can't even swallow it right now. Mm-hmm. Because I know that if I swallow it, it's going to go right back up. So, I mean, it has taken a toll on me. My anxiety even gets bad sometimes because I'm like, well, is it going to be okay today? The last time I tried it, it made me super sick.
So then you start to develop a fear for that particular food because the last time you ate it, it was very traumatizing to have. And I'm not really sure if I'm ready to be vomiting until 3 a.m. today. Over 5 bites, maybe 3 bites is going to put me down for hours on end.
Right.
So,
I had an eating disorder in high school, or so I thought. So, like, in my head, it's like, well, I don't want to go back to that. But, I mean, after a while, I realized that it was the GP that was playing a role in it. I literally could not eat anything. I would eat a granola bar, and that was that. And, I don't want to feel like I'm starving myself.
Right. And you were in high school, you said, when you had that issue?
Yeah.
Well, that makes more sense because of your developmental stage and your hormones at that time. It's really hard for us to get a grip on our body, most teenage female women at that age, because we're more developed than men at that age. All of our bodies are whacked and crazy, and we're all learning our bodies. But when you're learning your body hormonal-wise, and then you're learning it with food, when your hormones play a big role in your body and how you take to things, And then adolescence, the pressure of school and being a teenager itself that brings, and the anxiety and stress, it intensifies all of that because, you start to develop these feelings towards food that you don't realize because you don't have a diagnosis why you're getting them, but every time you eat, popcorn, you're horribly sick, or trying to throw up popcorn is not very fun. Whenever you're, or green beans. I remember when I was pregnant, most pregnant women could probably relate to this. I didn't know I had GP, but I ate a can of these green beans when I was pregnant, and I loved every bite of it. But then for hours on end, I was throwing it up, and it was so hard and so chunky. And I remember blaming that on the pregnancy. And I remember telling myself, oh my God, it was because you're pregnant. Well, even to this day, when I look at green beans, I cannot know. And then
barbecue sauce.
I'm like,
do not do barbecue sauce because of it. The smell. I opened it up, and I literally went to Arby's, and I said I want a barbecue chicken. I used to love barbecue, and I ordered the barbecue chicken, and we were on our way, and I went to take a bite, and I literally got so nauseous. The second it hit my mouth, we had to go through Arby's again to order something different. And to this day, unless I am in the mood for it or know that I can handle it, I will not touch barbecue sauce.
Yes, and when I was pregnant, I remember McDonald's. It smelled so nasty. And just the smell of McDonald's made me hurl. But then when I wasn't pregnant, McDonald's was fine to me. There's nothing wrong with the smell of McDonald's. Right. But those are the same feelings that I'm bringing up through those pregnancies that all GP patients feel about food, and we're not pregnant. So it's not like a hormone thing, but when your hormones are on 10 when you're pregnant, or when you're a hormonal adolescent teenager who is learning her hormones, which is what you were at that time, you just don't have full control of that. A pregnant girl can't just be like, oh, well, make that McDonald's smell good. No, it's horrible, and I'm going to barf. Get me out of here. I feel like I'm going to throw up just from smelling those French fries. I haven't even got to see them. All I do is smell them. Nope. Get me away from here.
Nope.
And Checkers, I was pregnant, and I cried for Checkers French fries. They smelled so good, and I wanted them so bad, but I was so broke that day, and all I wanted was Checkers French fries. I didn't want anything else. I had a food stamp card and everything with money, and I'm like, you can't buy those at the grocery store. This is what I want. I'm ready to take back pop bottles, and then eventually I got my Checkers, got 2 bites down, and GP said, ha, did you forget about me? Nope. Here I am. You're not allowed to have those. Just give those on right back over here. Throw them on up. Get it out. And there they went. And I worked so hard to get those fries to not be able to eat them.
Right.
I was like, what do you mean? Yeah. I was so mad.
Why are you playing this game on me right now?
Do you know what I had to go through for these fries?
And that was the thing, my whole feeling with my roast and because it was in the crock pot, so I cooked it all day long.
The energy and love.
And just was getting so excited for it. And then I took that bite, and I was like, oh no, you've got to be kidding me right now. And that's why I sat on the floor, and I just cried.
Probably, why God? Why me? Why God? Why this? Why God? You had a million and one questions, and you sat on the floor ready to have that conversation with him right now. In this very kitchen. We're going to do this.
Why did I get so lucky?
I've been there. Or, why do you hate me today? What did I do? Is it because I didn't do this yesterday or that? I told you I would.
What karma?
You start questioning all your moves.
Karma fighting me so bad.
So if I take the kindergartners next week and do a volunteer field trip, would that fix this? What do I gotta do?
To the Salvation Army and just give lunch to everybody.
Yeah, I'll sign up. Just tell me, and we'll put this behind us. I'll apologize. We can go ahead and fix this because this was a mistake. Yeah. Mistake. Yep. So we'll fix it. I'll volunteer. Where do I need? Sign what?
Next time, just, shoot me in the foot with a rock or something.
Yeah, at least I can recover from that a lot easier. It's not forever. The boo-boo's there. It comes, it goes, and I keep it pushing. I sprained my ankle, and that was much better.
Right.
So we could have just broke a bone and called it a day, but here we are.
Let's do that next time. Just push me down the hill. I'll be okay.
We've had a lot of those conversations in this house.
I love food.
Yes.
Food.
And food porn was like one of my favorite things, and it still is, because sometimes I love taking pictures of food, especially food that I like make for my family that I can't eat, because the photos are like, oh, if I could only eat that. Oh, look at it.
And I loved to bake when I was growing up, and I thought back, like, gosh, you know, like I really haven't even baked in like the last 6-7 years.
Same.
But that's honestly because if I bake it,
I can't eat it.
I can eat it.
I'm not making something that I cannot eat that takes me hours on end to make, and I am forced to smell it the whole entire time. And when I do make it something for somebody else that I cannot eat, it's a quick, fast meal. Don't expect me to get in there slaving like Cinderella, because Cinderella does that because at the end she gets to have a beautiful pot too.
Yeah, and I want that pot, damn it.
I'm not getting it, so you know what? You better have my husband cook that for you. Go ask him.
He's the biggest. He actually is very lucky that he cooks a lot of the time.
Same in this house. 90%.
I know darn well that if I even like can't stand the smell or whatever, like I'm not gonna eat it. If I can't, like, if it looks disgusting, my stomach will start to turn. It's the weirdest thing.
Well, not only that, but then while you're cooking it, because it makes you nauseous, you're gonna actually be vomiting. No one wants you vomiting while you're cooking their meal.
Well, right, and it's just
and then not only that, but then now while I'm vomiting, who's actually watching the food? Like today, I was trying to make some food, and then I almost burnt the rice because I was stuck in the bathroom. And then I got out of the bathroom, and I realized, oh shit, I forgot to turn off that rice before I went in there. Let me go check on that. Well, I mean, it's not fully stuck to the pan. It's savable.
Right. The top half is really good.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, it's like, we could just take that. The bottom half will leave there. If you don't stir it, it won't mix in with the rest. Like, I had all these answers of how we could fix this without starting all over. Definitely not starting over. But I definitely can relate. I have a question for you. Where can our fans follow you at? Do you have, like, a Facebook that you're willing to share with us? Or
I do have a Facebook. My name, so it'll be Jenn Henrichs. My last name is Henrichs. I do try to post a little bit on there, more so now, just to where, make awareness with it, because I do know a couple people that do struggle, and they have gotten tested for it, and actually you could say a couple, like 2, have gotten tested for it, and they did turn out to have it. So, but you can always go in there. I've honestly thought about making a Facebook page just so that I'm not bombarding all of my friends.
You know what? Bombard them. Awareness is important, especially when more people nowadays are getting tested. And if we're not sure if this is genetic or not, the more awareness that we have is important. Because I've been so publicly about some of my diseases over the last, 5-6 years, I've had people come to me and message me and be like, I just got tested for gastroparesis. I searched it and you came up and I realized we were friends and that we've talked before and I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is. Can you tell me stuff about it? And I've actually gotten that call like 10, maybe 12, 15 times and easily through Facebook from random strangers that I've never met and never really fully had a real conversation with. We like a couple people's pics, we share a couple posts, but I don't really know them. I never met them in person. They live in whole other states, countries, whatever. But because I shared my story, they reached out to me and they just wanted to know, like, how have I dealt with it and what is it? Just like the what is it question. It's like, you mean to tell me a doctor told you had this and they didn't tell you what it was? No.
Yeah.
Like, that is the number one shocker for me, that, it's such a rare disease and it comes with such a big battle that the doctors...
boyfriend didn't even believe me on what it was. I had to help him look it up.
Yeah.
And now, he's starting to kind of realize, like...
This is a real thing.
This is a real thing. And he even made that comment this morning. He was like, you have so many medical issues, like, we're not even...
Yep. So, see, bringing that awareness, I wouldn't ever separate or divide yourself. I've done that for many years, and I felt like I was masking who I was. And when I just let it be, I realized that the right people attracted to me, and I realized that's kind of what led me into the podcast, because I already talk to so many people because I have so many diseases. So, GP is just one of my many, where I'll have people randomly message me about another disease and say the same thing. Like, I just got diagnosed with intercystitis and I really don't know much about it, or I realize you have adenomyosis or endometriosis. What is that about? I know about endometriosis, but I've never heard of adenomyosis, and I see that you talk about it a lot. So, what is it? So, share that awareness, spread the word, because you're a fighter and you shouldn't down it at all. Don't.
And that's exactly what I've been trying to do. And honestly, my boyfriend, he's been having stomach issues. I don't think it's gastroparesis. He doesn't have the nausea and stuff like that. But he does have, there is something, he'll eat certain foods and then he'll get sick. And the next day he'll eat the same thing and he'll be fine. So, I mean, there's definitely something there, and it could be.
Yeah, it could. It very well could be. It also could be IBS as well. That's also very common for some of the symptoms of what you just described. But sometimes people get diagnosed with IBS before GP, or even Crohn's disease before GP, or at the same time. Yeah. It's kind of while we're in there, we'll test, and it's a 2-for-1 deal. And you come out with both. So, you never really know. And GP isn't as rare as people think. It's only rare because 15 years ago around, don't quote me on the exact year, but is when we came up with what GP is. So we've only been for 10 or 15 years giving out diagnoses. And now we're giving them more than we ever did before. And before, we only had certain doctors in certain states that were equipped. Now there's doctors in all states. They might not be all doctors, but there's doctors in all states, which is way more further than we were before. So as we continue to evolve and grow, and the more people you get diagnosed, just in some of the support groups, I love Melissa's support group. Her support group literally started, I want to say maybe 8 years ago or something. And when we first got in there, it was hard to get the first 100 girls in there, 100 people. And now we're at 30,000. With GP.
And that's amazing.
But that's also a lot. So how rare is 30,000?
I wouldn't even. That's a big number.
That's a big number. And if we continue to diagnose, those 30,000 will never have a cure. So we'll only always be adding to it. I feel like there's way more people out there that don't even know what they're dealing with, and they don't even know to find a GP doctor. They don't know what they're looking at. And a lot of people have doctors that don't know what GP is. So you can't get a diagnosis without a doctor who doesn't know what it is. And if you don't know what it is and you don't know what to look for, you're really not going to get a diagnosis.
And I talk about it. I talk about it all the time. So I'm hoping, to my friends, to people at work, I'm really hoping they would be oh my gosh, so-and-so has the exact same problems, and bring to them, have them add me on Facebook.
Yeah, over time, that will happen. That will.
Let me point them in the right direction, and help them try to figure out what's wrong. You would much rather, if they don't come out with having it, that's fantastic. But if they do, I'm glad that I was there to help you and point you in the right direction and motivate you to get yourself looked at, because, you can, to struggle with all that pain and not know what's wrong with you is so depressing.
Yes, I actually had
having these issues.
Yep, I actually had a few friends that were personal, close friends that I seen on a daily, and they didn't really know what was going on with their body, and I kept telling them, oh, you guys got GP. They went and got tested, and sure enough, they had GP, and I kept telling them, and they were like, no, that's rare. No, that's really rare. I looked it up. No. And then they brought it up to their doctor, and their doctor thought, I think you do. And they went and got tested, and sure enough, GP. And so often as a GP fighter, we can see someone else's struggle and see it for what it is before a doctor can. And not because we're doctors, but because we are fighting the actual fight. So we recognize someone that's walking that same battle that we're walking and fighting those same fights. And we classify it as that. Whether, it is or ain't is up to the person to figure out, but it's definitely something in that area, that's for sure. And an endoscopy would give the diagnosis of whatever it is. So anybody out there who is struggling with stomach issues and is hearing all of these podcasts and they're like, I think I have that, just go get an endoscopy, or a delayed emptying study. A delayed emptying study will for sure tell you, but an endoscopy will tell you way more, and if it is or isn't that. So an endoscopy is where I would start first, and then a delayed emptying study is where I would go second. Just because you want to just rule out other possibilities, and doing a biopsy of the stomach is so important too, to make sure there aren't infectious diseases as well, because GP comes with a lot of infectious diseases. Once the food spoils in your stomach, what happens next? Well, infectious disease happens next, or bacteria, any form of infection. So doing a stomach biopsy does a lot. So I definitely encourage all fans out there who are listening who feel like this is something they're suffering from, but they're just not quite sure, to bring it to them. A gastroparesis goes for a gastrointestinal specialist or a GI, but not all of them. There are ones that deal with particularly with GP. So if you get on Google, you can type in GP GI specialist, and one that particularly deals. If your doctor has to get on Google and Google what this is, he's probably not the right stomach doctor for you.
Exactly.
So I say that too much here. If your doctor's Googling and you're Googling, then Google is your doctor.
Right, and I've been actually very, very fortunate having, even the ER visit, they will come in and be like, guys, just so you know, she does have gastroparesis. She is a gastroparesis patient, and their mood, they just change. And you can tell, they're more willing to help you because they know that you're physically struggling every day. But I mean, and it's great for me because then I know, I'm having more of an extra care because certain foods won't sit or certain medicines won't sit. And it's not like, oh, she's lying that this isn't working.
Yes, having doctors that know what you have, understanding the fact that you have it, and realizing, yeah, hey, she has that. Those are 3 factors that make your overall treatment and care so much better.
A lot better.
Makes you accomplishing any.
Yep. And less of a puzzle.
Yeah, accomplishing whatever goal you're there to fix will probably be more likely to get accomplished because the doctors are on the same page as you. So getting them on the same page is so important. And if they have to Google that page, they're still not on the same page yet. They're still figuring it out.
And if you are admitted for whatever reason, and then they have to ask you what it is, just, don't be ashamed to, kindly suggest a different doctor. Be like, can you just kind of ask different doctors and see if they understand what GP is? This is a huge struggle. This is an actual disease, and I don't feel like I'll have the care that I need if you don't know or understand.
I've had to do that as well. So that's very important to have the confidence to be able to self-advocate when you're dealing with certain things. If you don't feel the doctor is on the same page, request a new one. Find one that is on the same page. Request that he come and be the doctor. Definitely. Yeah. But in the future, would you be interested in a follow-up for you and your son?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, for sure. Well, I look forward to that follow-up, and I thank you for doing this interview with me.
Anytime. I'm glad I can tell my story and hopefully help out anybody who's struggling and doesn't know, if they're like, well, maybe I have it, or maybe I should get tested, or even the ones that do know and are struggling, different things that I have to take or do, if that helps them, give them suggestions on what to try as well. So, I mean, I'm glad I could help out and give you my life story and whatever. So, anytime.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, until then, thank you for joining Sprinkle for Some Love with a Cause, and enjoy your day, everyone.